Hello there, and welcome to another episode of 5 Minutes, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring podcast. Episode 2. We are at 2 now. Yes, this is happening. Well, now, to better explain how this entire thing works, I will watch 5 minutes of the first Lord of the Ring movie, extended cut, of course, because there's no other way to watch these films, and I will analyze said 5 minutes with more than just goggles, but binoculars and X-ray vision, so that multiple fandoms could learn a few things from me when it comes to obsessive overanalyzation. That's a term, yeah, I just made that up. You're welcome. Clear now? Me analyze 5 minutes of film. Me makes long podcast about set 5 minutes of movie. We good? Yeah? Fantastic. I'm glad we cleared that out. And with it being the second episode and all, I wanted to bring in something new which I will undoubtedly use often. Not every episode, but who knows, maybe I will. Welcome to Things I Did Not Know last episode but found out while making this one. I am just a master when it comes to easy to remember and lengthy titles. I should get a medal for this one. Can I get a badge for that? A pin. Can I have a pin? Like a super long stretched pin. That would be great. I have a bag filled with pins. It's like a voodoo doll, but a bag. Anywho, remember in the previous episode when we first saw the 7 Dwarven Lords and I said I have no idea who portrayed them? Well, that statement is now only half true. Massive shout out to amagpiesnest.com. Hello there. Hi, Editor Me here. I'm sorry I have to interrupt this nice program for a little news. I wanted to show you, like right here, a little sneak peek, a little screenshot of amagpiesnest.com. And I can't. For some reason, the website just doesn't exist anymore. Now, when I'm doing this, oh my god. Anyway, imagine a website. That was nice. Oh god. I hope I find enough imagery. If I'm lacking imagery, it's because I don't have the imagery from a magpie's nest. Damn it. Okay. Well, good luck me. Yikes. Okay. Back to the show. Who's just obsessive as I am. Let me quote here. How did it come to this? I don't know. I think a combination of passion for Lord of the Rings books, an affection for the movies, a love of soundtracks, and an obsessive personality. A magpie's nest. Fun fact, one of my friends who also obsesses over Tolkien's creations also loves to use the word magpie in her tags online. So I genuinely thought for a moment that this was her, proving once again how little the world can be. Okay, the internet in that case, but whatever, it would be insane. And insane it remains because it wasn't her, but that would have been cool. I'm sure we would be good friends. A magpie's nest and I. Magpie, if you hear this, what up? Keep in mind that all this information is a lot of guessing and speculating, but I found it rather well researched, and so far it's the only source of a potential answer to who those dwarves could be. And even the fan wiki references a magpie's nest, and if the wiki says so, it has to be true. So with the help of the internet and the appendices part 1, designing and building Middle-earth design galleries, Realms of Middle-earth the Second Age, tried to say that one 3 times in a row, a magpie's nest was able to number the dwarves from left to right, starting with the 3 in the back and continuing with the ones at the front after. With their aid, we are able to identify at least 3 of the dwarves with the aid of behind-the-scenes footage and the card game of the Lord of the Rings.
Wait, what? They had their own card game? Really? Can I see that? Okay, yeah, no, sure, yeah, first dwarves.
The first dwarf was probably played by Rich Mayberry, given that we know of an autograph card signed by him with a picture of him as dwarf number 1. Can I say that this is the most masculine name I have ever heard? Mayberry. It might sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. If you play one of Dwarf Daddy's creation and can rock Mayberry in real life, you are one masculine son of a dwarf. Rich Mayberry is mostly active in the makeup department and not in front of the camera. He was active in The Walking Dead, Hitchcock 2012, and Starship Troopers, to name a few. And of course, here, The Fellowship of the Ring and The Return of the King. That rhymed. Cool. We can also see him on one of the cards of The Lord of the Rings trading card game, produced by Decipher Inc., who discontinued everything in 2010. Anyway, on the card we see the name Linnar. I am not sure if the name actually means anything in Tolkien's universe. According to the wiki, they are all non-canon characters, when it comes to the names and appearances at least. Tolkien never specified what the 7 Dwarven Lords looked like, or who actually received the rings, because it doesn't really matter, because they're all dead. Yeah! Happy times! Now, Linnar actually has a connection to our own world. Name-wise, of course. It originates in Scandinavia, which surprises no one given that this place with its mythos heavily inspired Tolkien himself. Linnar is Old Swedish and a dialect variant form of the name Lindor. And no, I don't mean the chocolate. Lindor is short for Lindorm, and that means snake. Okay, can we first talk about how Lindor is short for Lindorm? Like, you scratch one letter and it's the short... That's ridiculous. It's like if I'm going, oh yeah, my name is Gaydien, but the full name is Gaydien. Like, what the hell? It's ridiculous. I am pretty sure that not that much thought went into naming this fella. It just sounded Nordic and that was it. Like, who the hell would actually check the names of these characters who are on screen for just a few moments and are never seen again, ever again? Yeah, right. Who would do that? Moving on to the second dwarf, who was portrayed by Xander Forteri, however you want to pronounce it, who, like May Berry, also is a makeup artist, but also works with puppets and props. He was born in 1972 and began his career in 1989 at the Amsterdam Opera House. You can basically read his entire history on his website, xffx.nl. For some reason, this sounds like a very shady website than an established professional in the movie industry. But then again, some shady websites do include people of the film industry. Whatever. He worked on the first 2 Lord of the Rings films and Thor: The Dark World. Again, to name a few. Now, his trading card shows the name Uri, and Uri originates from Hebrew with the meaning of my light or my flame. This fits a dwarf much better than Snake. They forge things with fire and they tend to be shiny like light. Uri, much better. Also, in Switzerland we have a state, canton, county, whatever. One of which is called Uri, which happens to be one of the 3 founding ones of Switzerland. Irrelevant to the movie, but I found the arbitrary connection amusing. At least for me. The last and final dwarf is played by Gino Acevedo. Avocado. Acevedo? Yeah, okay. Similar to his fellow dwarves, he is also active in the makeup department, and still is to this day. Working on the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit trilogy. He even worked on Game of Thrones and the Umbrella Academy. Neat. For more of his biography, you can check his website, ginoacevedoart.com. Their PR team should really reach out to me with all the publicity I'm giving. Yeah, me, who has such a following. Absolutely. Give me money. The dwarf he portrayed was named Sindri, and like Linnar, this name is of Norse origin, but unlike Linnar it fades way better. For the name simply means mythical dwarf, small, trivial, sparkling, all things that make much more sense when you name a dwarf. And time. Whew. I can talk about buff, muscly dwarves any day. But let's focus on the other thing I was able to find out while I was working on the second episode of this podcast. You know, something I didn't know in the previous one? Yeah, so remember this flag? You know, the flag that is shown for a few frames during the time where Sauron is blowing up? Well, I figured out who this sigil belongs to. While looking at it, I thought, sure, it has some blue, but there is so much green in it. Green. Green! So I went to the elves that are best associated with the green color, the Sindar elves. Again, there are multiple types of elves. If we were to compare the Noldor to the Sindar, we could simply say that the Noldor are the High Elves and the Sindar are the Wild Elves, differing mostly in their preferred living location. Again, there are many more types of elves in Middle-earth, but I'll get to them at another point in this series. Now, looking at the sigil of the Sindar, it does sort of look like the one on the flag, but not really. There are similar elements to it, yes, most notably the color, but it's not it. So, I dug deeper and found one that looks much more like it, but the symbol in the middle is at the wrong angle and the background is a deep dark green, so no, again. But then, I saw it, in the corner of my screen. There it was, the exact same sigil, and who does it belong to? Well, it's the man of ships himself. Give a round of applause for the good elf. It's Círdan, everybody, Círdan. The shipwright. You know the one with Erendil? The one who saw the ship of Erendil? You know that one? The old one? The one who also got a Ring of Power? It's that one. Looking back on it, I'm surprised that I didn't think of him sooner. Again, he tends to fade into the background quite often. Not just here, but generally in the plot of the story. Círdan was one of the original receivers of the 3 Elven Rings, so it makes absolute sense that he and his men would be in the War of the Last Alliance. After the battle, it was him who told Isildur to destroy the One Ring, not Elrond. That was changed in the movie. Again, he is a very important character and shaped a lot of things in Middle-earth. Can I also mention that he is probably Ulmo's favorite? Ulmo is the Vala of the sea, basically Poseidon in this world, and it is the one who gives Gyrdan his visions. I love the image in my head that this powerful, mighty Vala cheekily sends him visions so he has an advantage against evil in Middle-earth. I don't know, it's cute in my head. Like a dungeon master giving inspiration to one of his players in Dungeons & Dragons. Now, with that out of the way, we can finally begin with the actual movie. That took not so long, did it? We begin at minute 5 with the One Ring falling deeper into a river and end at minute 10 where Bilbo is sitting in a chair in his study. We still hear the glorious tune of the One Ring while it descends deeper into the wet depths of the river of Anduin. We hear Galadriel say that some things that shouldn't have been forgotten were lost. So everything is fine, right? They were simply lost and not forgotten, and people were searching for the One Ring and had a good and general idea where it was given where Isildur died, right? You're always so picky with words, Galadriel. You surely won't contradict yourself, Galadriel. With her words, the screen fades to black again, and she continues on that history became legend, legend became myth, and that for the past 2,500 years that the One Ring had passed out of all knowledge. So it was forgotten, like a child in the grocery store. Get your narration straight, Galadriel, please. Actually, that is quite impressive. For an object of such importance to just be semi-forgotten by everyone, that is quite a feat. Damn, what is the stealth in this shiny circle? We fade back in onto what should be the river of Anduin, but it looks much more like a pond or lake. The water doesn't seem to flow into any direction, really. Okay, maybe very slightly to the left, but then again, I am unsure because it could also be simple waves caused on the right side of the water. So yeah, the area seems dark and gloomy and very wet, similar to the area we were previously in with Isildur. Then, a transition happens from the surface of the water to the One Ring, which is partly buried in the bottom of the river. A shadow covers the ring and we hear Galadriel say, "Until, when chance came, it ensnared a new bearer." And we witness a hand grabbing the ring out of its dirt prison and bringing it up to the surface, leaving a bunch of sand and dirt behind. The music builds up slightly and ends in a suspenseful silence, and we see a grimy hand with long and dirty nails holding the One Ring. Get a manicure, please, it's disgusting. And for the first time in this trilogy, we hear the amazing performance of Andy Serkis. My precious. This legend of an actor has been active in a number of movies and series, such as multiple Planet of the Apes movies or 2005's King Kong. He was active in theatre and would also direct for the Hobbit films. Later even write a book about his experience playing Gollum, called Gollum, How We Made Movie Magic, which was published after the Return of the King in the year 2004. I don't know why every word is capitalized. This is not how grammar works, really. But I'm not going to question someone on how to title their things, because that would be quite hypocritical of me. He was nominated Best British Actor for both The Two Towers and The Return of the King, for which he won in the year of The Return of the King. Rightfully so. But that's not the one people care about. Let's talk about the MTV Award for Best Virtual Performance in the year 2003. Yes, MTV. Is it still a thing? It was all the rage back then. God, I feel so old right now. Since Andy Serkis can't be present in person during the award show, he delivers his speech as a pre-recorded message. During his acceptance speech, Serkis gets interrupted by Gollum himself. Nicely put there by the power of CGI. It doesn't look quite as nice, but the performance is killer. While Smeargle tries to thank MTV and claim that Dobby the House Elf is his friend, Gollum in turn insults pretty much everyone, including Serkis. The insults are also of a more modern language, so we hear Gollum swear in good old MTV fashion. Important to note is that his work on The Lord of the Rings started a debate on how legit CGI-assisted acting is. The way he moved, talked, and generally shaped Gollum is infamous and epic as hell. He of course won several other awards, but I would be here until tomorrow if I were to go all over them. But to summon up the bigger ones, I'm using quotations here, he won 1 BAFTA award, 2 Empire Awards, and 2 Screen Actors Guild Award. His shelves at home certainly have a purpose, depicting all that bling. Speaking of bling, my precious is the first line we hear of him, calling to the One Ring which already had begun to consume him. Again, he might be calling Sauron's first name Mairon, since all of the Dark Lord's essence was poured into the One Ring. Galadriel confirms that this is Gollum by saying that the ring came to the creature Gollum, who took the ring deep into the Misty Mountains, where he was consumed by it. She explains this to us while we pan over a long chains of mountains with clouds and mists covering the tips. Interesting. How absolutely wrong Galadriel is. Incorrect. False. Let me explain. The way she describes it here sounds like that the bearer after Isildur was Gollum. And yeah, in a way that is correct, but the one first to have the ring was Deagol, Gollum's aka Smeagol's cousin, two hobbits who were out fishing on Smeagol's birthday. Once Deagol was pulled into the water by a large fish, he came across the One Ring. It was his hand we saw before taking it with him. We see this fishing scene at the beginning of the Return of the King. Smeagol asks if he could have the ring since it is his birthday, but Deagol refuses. They fight over it, and Smeagol ends up killing Deagol with little to no remorse, and takes the ring as his own. Answering the question of the previous podcast, yes, the ring would be a lovely birthday gift to your cousin. Just make sure you don't want the present yourself so that your cousin doesn't kill you in cold blood. But wait a minute, they're hobbits, right? Yeah, I know, it's like whiplash with my transitions here. I thought the ring ended up in the depths of the river of Anduin. How the hell did it end up in a pond in the Shire? We later see that the ring can kinda move, and I'm using fat quotation marks with the word moving, but I doubt that it moved all the way to the Shire, and even if it did, Gollum later got the ring to the Misty Mountains, which is not around the corner, and Bilbo later in his life needed basically almost an entire book to pretty much get there. So how the hell did the ring get there? You don't have legs, you shiny bastard. I have legs and barely use them. But then my brain remembered something. Hobbits. Plural. More than one. Right. Similar to pretty any other race in Middle-earth, the Hobbits too have different tribes and clans. We count 3 different Hobbit families. The Harfoots, the Stors, and the Followhides. For now, we don't have to care for the other 2 and can focus on the Stors Hobbit. Because those hobbits lived in the Vales of Anduin, dwelling in the Gladden Fields. Sound familiar? Well, it should. The Gladden Fields is where Isildur died, and the Vales of Anduin is where the river of Anduin flows through. The Stors are fishermen and are known as riverside people. The word store is supposed to be a special Hobbitish word which doesn't exist otherwise in Westron, and Westron is the common tongue, the normal language most people speak. Interestingly enough, in early English, the word store means large or strong, explaining the bigger build of Store hobbits in comparison to the other 2. The area in which the Stores were at home is somewhat close to the Misty Mountains, so it all makes sense now that a hobbit of the Vales could stumble upon the One Ring and then later get it to the Misty Mountains. The filming location was a completely different one though, filmed in the magnificent Fernside Gardens in New Zealand. But I will talk about those when we get there, which means the Return of the King, meaning I would need to finish this one and the 2 towers first. Someone save me from myself, please. That's 3 insane large project or 1 massive project. It's like studying, in a way. The Fellowship is my bachelor, the 2 towers will be my master, and the Return of the King will be my PhD. At the end of all this, I can be professor for Tolkien mythos, movie trilogy, and obsessive analytics. Someone save me from myself, please. Speaking of movie trilogy, the Misty Mountains we see here probably are close to the Southern Alps of New Zealand. As a person who grew up with Alps themselves, I have to give those Alps a solid 8 out of 10. Too misty, in my opinion. We pan over the mountains and cut into a dark and gloomy cave where we see several fish bones and leftover heads. Ugh, yuck. We move forward and are met with a hunched forward creature gently caressing something in their hand. This is Gollum, who is absolutely consumed by the One Ring. All the while we hear the words, "It came to me, my own, my love, my own, my precious." With the last line, we hear the noise that gave Gollum his name, the Gollum, or something like that. Right now it just sounded like a frog. Sorry. And we also see that 2 pale eyes are reflecting the light. Not only did the ring deform his body, but gave his eyes tapetum lucidum, a special reflective structure that makes eyes appear to glow in dim light. That is what, for example, cat eyes have in them. It is essentially a tiny mirror in the back of the eyeball. That reflective light is also called eye shine. Sounds very pretty. Sounds like a makeup brand. Eye shine. 2 rays of light come in from the ceiling, maybe to give us, the viewer, a proper light source so we can actually see something in this goddamn cave. Or maybe it is a tie-in to Bilbo later, because he and Gollum will be in this cave together for some time playing riddles and such. Or maybe the other light might be Frodo, given that he too will fall under the ring's influence at the very end. So many interpretations, so little time. Well, we have all the time in the world, really, but I'm hungry and I'm desiring lunch. So let's wrap it up a bit, huh? Gollum is very misshapen and looks like a cousin of Quasimodo. This is the result of the One Ring's corruption. Next to his pro-gamer posture, it granted Gollum unnatural long life. Over 500 years Gollum would have the ring in his possession, and the ring would wait. According to Galadriel, at least. Damn! The ring is like a bad partner, waiting to ditch its significant other to run back to its first boyfriend. Jesus. The screen fades to black again, and we fade back to the bright full moon. Ah yes, the moon. What glorious light it gives us at night. Would you believe me if I told you that this moon used to be a tree in some way? Huh? No? Well, dear listener, let me tell you how wrong you are as we dive back into the Silmarillion for that bit of history in the world of Middle-earth. Maybe we will find Tommy while we're in there. I hope the spider didn't get to him. Well, here goes nothing. Long ago, as always, before the First Age, there was the Age of the Trees, called because of 2 massive trees that stood in Valinor. Again, Valinor is the land of the Vala, aka the Undying Lands, aka kinda heaven. Take your pick. The 2 large trees were shaped by the Vala Yavanna, who was the Vala of trees. She also shaped the Ents. We see those in the 2 towers. Also, to quickly explain how creation and stuff works, the Vala, aka angels, they cannot create anything really. What they can do is shape what was created by Eru Ilúvatar, aka God. So Eru created the light itself, and Yavanna shaped it into 2 trees with a song, because everything functions with music. I will go into the creation of Arda into detail once we first hear of Melkor, aka Morgoth, aka Bad Boy Number 1, so hang in there. But what you have to know now is that everything came into being with music. Instead of a big bang, you have an orchestral symphony. And then there was some chaos because of Melkor. I'll get to that. Now, Yavanna shaped 2 large trees, Silver Telperion and Golden Laurelin. Both of the trees were watered by the tears of Nienna, the Vala of Mercy. Did she cry because it was so goddamn beautiful? Or because they were bright as heck, and everything that had night vision kinda got screwed over by them? Whatever it was, the trees were huge and gave off enough light to illuminate all of Arda. And yes, they stood next to each other. Don't ask me how this works. Anyway, for the moon, we have to focus more on Telperion, the silver and older one of the trees. Also, Telperion is recognized as a he, while Laurelin was viewed as a she. Trees with gender. Progressive. And also... Tommy? Hi! Hi, there you are. How you been?
What the hell, man? There was a big-ass spider eating the trees with gender. God, it was hell on earth.
Oh, well, that was Ungoliant, a horrible dark creature which always hungered and wanted to eat all the time. To be honest, I relate to her. Treat yourself, girl. At some point in history, Bad Boy Melkor made a deal with her, and that included the destruction of the 2 trees of Valinor, plunging the world into almost darkness once again. Almost because the stars still existed and were unaffected by this horrible shit. Anyway, after the trees were destroyed, little was left of their light. There were the Silmarils, which were forged out of the light of the trees by problem child Feanor himself. And with those, the trees could have or might have been able to be restored, but Feanor said no to that and declared that no one but his blood should be in possession of the Silmarils, and then he went on to do... things. So faced with that, the Vala tried to re-sing the trees, but it didn't really work. They were too upset and heartbroken. But 2 things remained, a flower and a fruit. The flower was the remnant of Telperion, giving off a pure silver light, and the fruit was the remnant of Laurelin, giving off a warm golden light. But the lights were too little to shine over all of Alda at the same time, like the trees did. So, the Vala Aule, aka Dwarf Daddy, got to work, and he and his people created the vessels which would hold the radiant light of the last flower and fruit. Once the vessels were done, they placed each of the remaining lights within them, and as you can guess by that, those vessels essentially gave us the sun and the moon. 2 Maya were tasked to guide the vessels high up into the sky, protect them, guide them across Alda, so all of them could get a bit of the light. You know, because they couldn't shine all over Alda, so they had to get it from point A to B so everybody gets some of that light. The Maya Tilion was tasked to guide the moon, and the Maya Arien would do the same with the sun. Tilion seems like a chill Maya in my opinion, really. He originally was a Maya of Orme, the Vala of the Hunt. Tilion is described to be of somewhat impulsive nature, and it's hinted that he might have been in love with Arien. He apparently was somewhat reckless at times, which is why the moon would sometimes be in the sky same time as the sun, or covering the sun by accident, or vice versa. He would end up behind the sun. Since he is the guardian of the moon, he loves silver, and given he was once under Orme, he would use a silver bow to protect the moon and its light. Tilion is said to be usually naked when he isn't in Valinor, which, in all honesty, I do not mind in the slightest. Hello there. Oh yeah, Arien is here too. Let's put her to the side because it's the moon we see in this frame and not the sun. This is, after all, a movie. But before we turn to said movie, Tommy, what did we learn?
Don't follow the shiny things.
Good. So we focus onto a tree branch in front of the moon, and Galadriel says that a darkness crept back into the forest of the world. Rumour grew of a shadow in the east, and a whisper of nameless fear. Once again I have to make a little stop here. So that darkness was most likely Sauron himself. See, once the ring was destroyed, he couldn't take on a physical form, and retreated into the depths of Greenwood to recover his strength. He would hide within the fortress of Dol Guldur. He was known as the Necromancer, for he had disguised himself as such. Well, as much as you can disguise yourself with no actual body. The once lush Greenwood would turn darker and darker due to Sauron's presence, renamed Mirkwood, which means Darkwood. Creative genius right there. Sauron was later chased out of Dol Guldur and fled back to Mordor, which lays in the east of Middle-earth. Like Galadriel said, there was a whisper in the east. Also, by the way, Sauron left the woods willingly, because he had been there for quite some time and he had planned out a bunch of things and began to prepare the final war against the free people of Middle-earth. Okay, now we can move on. We are told that the Ring of Power sensed that the time had come, with a beautiful sunrise over the misty mountains, while a mystical tune is playing. And as we know, this sun used to be a tutti fruity fruit named Anar, aka the remnants of the tree of Laurelin, guided by the Maya. I told you I would come back to her, because now we see the sun. Everybody gets time to shine. Right? I'm hilarious, I know. Now, she is a Maya of Vana, the Vala who is responsible for preserving youth. Which, in honesty, she's doing a good job with the elves, but she is horrendous with the men. I mean, to be fair, humans didn't age so much back in the day. Now they are, because their blood kind of thinned out in some shape or form. No, I don't know biology, but the point is that she is the one in charge of making sure stuff remains youthful and fruitful. She is also known as Vana the Ever-Young. The interesting connection here, and why I'm mentioning her, of course, is because A, Arien served under her, and also she is the wife of Orome, the Vala of the Hunt, who is in charge of Tilion. So both sent one of their Maya up into the sky to guide the newly shaped sun and moon. Giving me a feel that one could make a rom-com with Tilion and Arien in it, seeing that their employers are married to each other and they most definitely knew each other before the job of celestial bodyguarding. So did Vana and Orome set the two up? Are they shipping them? Is Tilion ex-Arien their OTP? Before the destruction of the trees, Arien would tend to the golden flowers in Vana's garden with the bright dew of Laurelin. I need to mention that the light of the trees was also collected in a pond of sorts in front of the trees. And yes, the big bad evil spiders sucked those dry too, so you couldn't reshape them into trees. Next to Arien, there was another Maya who also served Vana named Melian. She later departed for Middle-earth. Is she relevant now? No. Will this Maya Melian be relevant for an entire bloodline of important characters in the shaping of Middle-earth? Possibly. We get to her in another podcast. I promise, we will. Because, boy, will I. Knowing that Arien tended the flowers of Vana, I can see why she would guide the sun and protect it. She obviously must have some knowledge about tending flora and fauna. But why did Tilion get the job? It never says that he did anything similar. All he did was hunt and be naked. So did those two super powerful world-shaping beings put the stern yet warm Arien and the goofy charmer Tilion in charge of the light so that they would end up together? And here I thought Aphrodite was extreme with her shipping. What the hell? I mean, there is nothing to confirm this, obviously, but I'd like to believe so. Because Tolkien is, after all, a choose-your-own-adventure. So, now we can move on. For real, I promise I won't talk about any celestial bodies in this podcast. I promise, I swear. With a heavy and loud cling, we see the ring falling down from somewhere onto a rocky surface. All of it moves somewhat in slow motion. We zoom out, only to zoom in again, and to see the ring bounce around, each with a heavy thud. We are told that the ring abandoned Gollum like a horrible romantic partner. I'm pretty sure it didn't even leave a sticky note. But hold up a minute. How did the One Ring leave? Did it grow limbs? Can it walk? Can it swim? You don't have legs, you shiny bastard. I have legs, and barely use them. I sit here in this chair and record this crap. I generally don't know how the ring was able to build up so much momentum that it would bounce around this hard, and I am not smart enough to make the math for that trajectory. However, we do know that the ring can do some things, such as ensnaring people and changing its weight. Because later in the movies, Frodo says that the ring is getting heavier with each passing day, and that it seems to be at its worst within Mordor. Also, we can see that the One Ring can somehow change its friction in some way. When Bilbo is trying to let go of the One Ring, it looks like the ring is desperately clinging onto Bilbo's palm in hopes he would take it with him, which would make a lot of sense. The ring is an extension of Sauron. Getting out of the Shire and closer into the world would benefit the ring. Also, Gandalf is right there, a Maya sent to assist in the destruction of Sauron. Wanting to get away from a being that wants your destruction is absolutely understandable. So, did the ring change its weight and friction to a degree that it would fall down from where it was and then bounce around like a tennis ball? Possible. And why was Gollum not carrying the ring? He was consumed by it. I don't see why he wouldn't have it. And if the ring was tied to Gollum, he would have probably heard the clingy noise of his precious. Or maybe they had a fallout and Gollum needed some time alone. Who knows? As it often goes with Tolkien, it's your choose-your-own-adventure. The screen fades to black when the ring leaves the picture to the left. According to Galadriel, something happened the ring did not intend. We fade back to the One Ring, partly embedded in the ground next to some fish bones. Did someone stand on it, or did it just become so heavy it dug itself in there? We then see a hand reaching out for the One Ring in curiosity, accompanied by the theme of the One Ring. Once again, Galadriel says something strange. It was picked up by the most unlikely creature imaginable. A hobbit. We cut to the hobbit in question, and it's Bilbo Baggins of the Shire. Now, why is this so strange? Well, the most unlikely creature imaginable already came across the One Ring. Remember that Gollum used to be a hobbit? So it isn't unlikely at all that a hobbit would find it. Heck, more hobbits than men or even Sauron were carrying around this thing. For Eru's sake, what the hell? I'm pretty sure she's just upset that it wasn't an elf. Anyways, Bilbo is portrayed by Sir Ian Holm. Now, of course, fans know who he is, but there are people who actually don't, so let me tell you some cool things about this guy. Sir Ian Holm was born in 1931 and went on to become an actor, narrator, and more. Interestingly enough, he did voice Frodo in the 1981 BBC radio series of The Lord of the Rings. You either voice your nephew or you live long enough to become his uncle. Holm was knighted in 1988 for his services to drama. The drama known as theatre, not the drama we know of the news. Though that would be quite something, wouldn't it? Newsflash, this just in. Woman in sumo wrestler suit assaulted her ex-girlfriend in gay pub after she waved at a man dressed as a Snickers bar. Gets knighted for her contribution to the weekly drama. You might laugh, but this actually was a headline in the Daily Telegraph on the 6th of June of 2013. I'm not making this up. I am not creative enough to make this up. But yeah, so Ian Holm did none of that and rightfully earned his knighting through his works and accomplishments. I mean, the guy began his filming career in 1968 and was active until 2014. He won several awards like the BAFTA Award and Royal Television Society Award. To name two. Again, I would be here forever if I were to name all of them. He played Bilbo Baggins in both Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films. Sadly, last year on June 19th, Sir Ian Holm died due to complications of the Parkinson disease. Parkinson is a horrible brain disorder that leads to shaking, stiffness, and difficulty with walking, balance, and coordination. Basically, your motor skills deteriorate. And on that day, we all had to say goodbye to our beloved Bilbo actor. But he lived a long life. He was 89 when he died, and he surely left a mark here. I remember when friends and I heard the news and we all took a moment of silence for the first man who had brought us Bilbo Baggins. After this short moment for Sir Ian Holm, we can move on with the movie. We see Bilbo's face examining what he had found in the dirt, smiling slightly as he uncovered it. He has curly hair and bright eyes, and he looks up as he hears Gollum scream. As Bilbo gets up, we can see what he is wearing: dark leather trousers, a dark green coat, and a red jacket with golden buttons covering a white shirt. He is standing within Gollum's cave. We know this because, well, he can clearly hear Gollum, and of course we all know the epic tales of Bilbo Baggins, The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, the story of Bilbo, how he helped a group of dwarves to reclaim their lost home. It was quite an unexpected journey. Don't worry, I will talk about The Hobbit later. Now, the way he got there is via the high pass of the Misty Mountains, the Misty Mountains being the area to which Gollum fled. Bilbo and his companions took shelter in what appeared to be a normal cave, but were later captured by goblins. Once they were brought to the Great Goblin, the leader of Bilbo's party, Thorin Oakenshield. My husband, everybody. Dwarf Daddy would be proud. Thorin tried to explain that they were simply seeking shelter from the storm outside. They didn't care for the Great Goblin's dominion. Unfortunately, the sword Thorin was carrying at the time was an elven blade named Orkist, the Goblin Cleaver, which was very well known among the goblins, given its name, Goblin Cleaver. Yeah, so the goblins fall into a rage and attack the dwarves. Chaos happens, and the dwarf who was carrying Bilbo on his back, Dori, gets attacked, and Bilbo falls off, hits his head, and loses consciousness. This happens twice, by the way. Bilbo hitting his head and losing consciousness for battles. Because, you know, The Hobbit was originally a children's book, so yeah. Anyway, when he wakes, this is where he is. He finds himself in the dark with no idea where the rest of his party is, and he happens upon a ring and he quickly puts it into his pocket, as we see it right here. And after that, he hears the scream of Gollum in the distance. We can also see that his jacket seems to be of thick wool. You know, the material grandparents had back in the day? The super itchy one? They keep you warm, yes, but hell, if they touch your skin, it's like 1,000 ants attacking you at once. At least for me. Am I wrong? Is something wrong with me? Don't answer that. Gollum screams that his precious is lost, and we jump back to the Misty Mountains, drawing away from them as we would be retreating ourselves. Galadriel announces that the time will soon come when the hobbits will shape the fortunes of all. Well, isn't that nice? She genuinely doesn't sound too upset about this one. Are you telling me that Galadriel is okay that hobbits are the protagonists of the story? Wow. We might even see some growth with her yet. While moving away from the mountains, we transition slowly to the map of Middle-earth onto the Misty Mountains. It almost looks like we left the real mountains and got transported away onto this very map and now traveling around Middle-earth. We move to the left and see Rivendell and continue to pass both the Weathertop and Bree, all locations we will see later in this film. There's a nice little tidbit, you know, like a little foreshadowing, like where we're going in this movie. We then enter the Shire, a place close to our hearts. For this place screams home and coziness, at least for me. And that will only double once the music kicks in. But we aren't there yet, so let's continue with the map a bit, shall we? Once we reach the Shire, the camera focuses on Hobbiton, with the famous Hobbithole underneath it. Hobbiton, as the name suggests, is a location in the center of the Shire and home to pretty much all the hobbits we are going to meet and fall in love with. Bilbo, Frodo, Sam, Pippin and Merry. It is a gorgeous place with green hills and fields filled with life, and it's just bloody amazing. We will see those in a moment. Next to the hill, we see Bywater. This is a small village close to Hobbiton, and got its name due to being on the water, a small stream that ran through parts of the Shire. And yes, they named a river just the Water, but with a capital W, like WTF. But most importantly, Bywater has the Green Dragon Inn, which is the main pub our lovely hobbits tend to hang out at. We then move a bit away from Hobbiton and can see other locations, such as Michel Delving and West Maren. Now, Michel Delving is the largest town in the Shire, and the mayor of the Shire was elected at this town. Every 7 years, a new mayor would be elected. Now, a mayor would look over the Shire holidays and make leadership decisions if they were even necessary. This title was the only political title of the Shire, and much later, after the events of The Lord of the Rings, Sam would be elected as mayor 7 times of the Shire. Which is somewhat ironic, because you elect one every 7 years, and Sam was one 7 times. I don't think he was one 7 times in a row. I think he was one 6 times in a row, then had a break, and then he was one again. Whatever. But what does that mean numerologically speaking? Like, every number has a meaning, right? So what does 7 mean? According to the internet, the number 7 is the number of completeness and perfection. Damn! Look at you, Sam. Look at you go, being absolute perfection. Who is a good gardener who aided in the defeat of the Dark Lord? You are. Yes, you are. You are, yes. How did I get here? In the Shire. Oh yeah, Shire. Right, let's get back to it. We can see left to Michel Delving the West March. Not too much is known of it. It is simply a region in the western Eriador and later became a part of the Shire, once Aragorn had become king and given it to the Shire. It has benefits if you're friends with the king. I don't know why he gave them to them, probably as a thank you because hobbits destroyed the One Ring, so there you do. Destroy some jewelry and you get a piece of land. I wonder if that works in our world as well. We zoom out of the map a bit and make out the Tower Hills, 3 towers built by Gil-galad long ago for his friend Elendil. It makes sense because his name is Elven Friend, so for his friend, you know? It makes perfect sense. They were the border between the Elven realm and the Arnor. The highest of those towers was named Elostirion and held the Palantir. Palantir is a round stone which could communicate with other Palantir. Right now, the Tower Hills, like the West March, don't belong to the Shire yet. We have 3 movies to go through before this happens. But yeah, the Tower Hills do belong to the Shire at the end of the trilogy. So there is that. More zooming out, we can see the Grey Havens, where we will see the departure of several characters of this trilogy, leaving Middle-earth for Valinor, or the Undying Lands, or Heaven, whatever you want to call it. Given that this was a port city, it's clear who was in charge here, right? Círdan! Everybody give it up for the shipwright elf. I mean, he was known as the shipwright, so it makes sense that he would be in charge. But I'll talk about the Grey Havens in another podcast. One of the last ones. Wow, that'll take years until I get there, so... Wow, yeah, put a big pin in that one. Yeah, let's do that. And we're still not done, my god. Harlindon, in the left corner, is what we see next at the coast. It was the southern division of the Elven realm of Lindon. Lindon is pretty much the west of Middle-earth here, separated by the Gulf of Lun, which is the river leading out of the Grey Havens. The northern division of Lindon was Forlindon. Now we can see what south and north means. Like, we can assume that For, the northern division, is Forlindon, northern Lindon, and Harlindon is southern Lindon. So, actually very easy. Yeah, the elves are either super stoned poets when it comes to naming their shit, or they're practical lamos. To be fair, I am no different, so do with that what you will. Next to Harlindon, we see a place called Minhiriath. This is one big place of sad, trust me. Plagued by war and literal plagues. It remains mostly uninhabited throughout the Third Age. It doesn't have a border to the north, but to every other side. There are some hunter folk who live in the woods of this land, but not many. However, Gandalf, in the book at least, predicts that, or foresees in a vision, that this land will be green and fertile again. Okay, next is Enedwaith, or Enedwiath, or Enedwudi, or whatever you want to pronounce it. I'm pretty much done mentally with this map. I want to get out of here. Please, someone save me from this map. Okay, but this one will be I promise, it'll be a quick one, I promise. So, Enedwaith means middle folk or middle region in Sindarin, because it is in the middle of the 2 kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. And that is pretty much it to the region itself. It used to be a lush green land until the Faithful arrived, aka the Númenóreans, and they used a bunch of woods for war and things against Sauron. It is basically a place for, you know, resources. That's pretty much it. Now last, but certainly not least, we make out Rohan, now somewhat centered in the screen. Hi Rohan! Don't worry, I ain't Gondor. I won't leave you hanging, but I haven't even gotten to the actual Shire yet, so I discuss you. in another podcast. I promise that. Cross on the heart or whatever people do. Thank Eru. We made it out of the map. This clingy bastard held me hostage for too long. Why are inanimate objects in this world so goddamn clingy? We leave the map, finally, and jump off its surface, and we see some texts and other maps behind it. But I can't make out what the texts say or what the other maps could be. Again, it really felt like that we went back through the map, away from the misty mountains to the warm comfort of Hobbithole. I mean, where are we? Ooh. We move away and see yet another map laying on a table. The font looks very elvish in nature, with its wavy and thin lines. But I thought, hey, maybe I find a map of Arda that has same bottom right corner. Maybe there is a coast that looks like this one, because I was sure it looked familiar, or my brain was going mental after all that Lord of the Rings map business. And guess what? I don't have a proof or anything, but I think it is the exact same map again, just in Elvish, because the coast in the bottom right corner looks like the coast of South Gondor. Again, I have no actual proof, and the image is not the best, but we later then move up a bit and see a bit more of the coast, and I am to 90% certain that this is the south of Gondor, with the small islands and the peninsula and everything. Did the set designer think we wouldn't notice this? Believe they could use the same map twice to save time and effort? Ha! Not with me, sucker. Who is responsible for this mess? I am 90% absolutely certain of. Grand Major. Wait, what, really? What? Grand Major? That's an interesting name for sure. I will remember that one. I have my eye on you, Grant. No more duplicates, or I'll take away one of your PFC's awards. That's how you pronounce them. Don't fight me on that one. The camera moves upwards and we finally come to a standstill for a moment and see the inside of the famous Hobbithole. I mean, yes, no suspense, okay? We know where we are, right? Also, while we saw the map and moved across it, we heard a voice speaking and mumbling that it's the 22nd day of September in the year 1400 by Shire records. We are in Bag End, Hobbiton, West Farthing, Middle-earth. Now, we know the exact address of Bilbo Baggins. We are told all of this while gentle strings play, and we hear the beginning of the wonderful Shire theme. Amazing. But it is very gentle and doesn't dominate the score just yet. Bilbo tells us that it is the third age of this world, and we move slowly through the hallways of the Hobbithole. The Shire theme fades partly, and the theme of the Fellowship tunes in, and we hear a soft rendition of the Fellowship theme. It feels like the music is outside waiting for us, ready for an adventure, and then we finally get the title of the movie, The Fellowship of the Ring. Woo! Hell yeah! We finally did it. We got to the second title screen. Amazing. And it only took us 29 pages of scripts to do it. Oh my god. We see that the interior seems to be made up of wood mostly, giving off this warm and comfortable feeling. Much better than stone or cobble or whatever people used back in the day. Scattered around the hallways we see at least a dozen old leather-bound books, which I would never do because books are treasures and they need to be in a shelf, Bilbo. We see a picture frame with what looks like hand-drawn art, a candle holder in the right hallway, and many other things one would see in a place they'd call home and their own private library. This place does look like a little library in my opinion. I am not complaining, I wish my place would look like this. This is place goals for me and friends. Like I want it to look like this. The camera glides around the left and we see walking sticks and even more books stacked against the wall. A burning fireplace comes into view and we see even more books. Bilbo, I know, this is your place and you can do whatever you like, but for Eru's sake, put the books on a shelf or somewhere safe, especially the ones close to the fire. My inner librarian is getting an anxiety attack from seeing the precious old paper that now looks super epic and cool, so close to its destruction. Clean up after your mess, Bilbo, please. For me, okay? For me, I mean, come on. We move closer to the room in front of us and we can see the man behind the chaos. Bilbo Baggins. He is sitting in one of those chairs which are great to work in but suck to relax in. You can't really lean back and the arms are super thin and it squeaks with every move you make. The room we are in now has a bunch of scrolls, which I assume are also maps? And multiple sheets of paper and other books are here scattered, like a crazy college student had forgotten to send in his project and turned in the entire room upside down to find it. It's not based on real events or anything, I'm just saying. Bilbo is sitting at a table which is at a certain angle so he doesn't have to bend his back too much. I love those tables. They are fancy, they save your back troubles, and you look like a cool hobbit ready to write down his adventures, which is exactly what Bilbo is doing. We hear Bilbo mumble, "There and Back Again, A Hobbit's Tale by Bilbo Baggins," and we cut to his hand writing the title. It is a magnificent work of calligraphy, and I could never do such a thing. Every time I start to write something, in a journal or whatever, it begins with a nice and clean hand, but it ends up chaos and tight letters like I was running out of space on the paper, when it usually never is the case. But not here. All is elegantly crafted, and anyone who loves nice fonts and calligraphy will get a kick out of his handwriting. I surely do. As we can see, he is using a feather quill to write. I'm not entirely certain what type of feather it is. Back in the day, the commonly used ones were goose feathers, but this one is way too dark and has markings of some sort, so it might be a turkey, a hawk, or an owl feather, because those would fit the markings in this way. Anyone who has ever used a feather or an ink pen in their life to write with knows the agony and the mess which comes with this type of writing tool. You smear, get your fingers dark and full of ink. But not Bilbo. Oh no, he is a sophisticated hobbit and has no time for failure. Ha! Of course not. I am pretty sure that Sir Ian Holm did not write this entire thing in one go off screen and simply came in to write the last few lines with the word Baggins. The hand we see here certainly looks like the one of Sir Ian Holm, but it's way too clean. It's way too clean. He then puts the feather away and instantly turns the page. Are you mental? Are you nuts? Why would you do this? You just wrote this elegant and still very wet line onto this amazing thick yellow parchment. This will smear and leave gross marks if you flip it now. I know you don't care much for order in your own home, Bilbo, but you want others to enjoy your reading, right? Oh God, ugh. Well, with me getting an uncomfortable feeling for the ink on the other side of this page, we turn to an empty page and cut back to Bilbo in his chair, who's taking in a view from his pipe, while he is asking himself where he should begin. And here is where we have a direct call back to the books. He begins with a section called Concerning Hobbits. During his contemplation, the music of the fellowship is gone, and we hear nothing but the fire crackling in the fireplace. We then see Bilbo dunking his feather into a bottle of ink in front of him. Perfect amount. No spill. No drops. This hobbit is a natural at calligraphy. Or whatever you call ink writing. 'Cause, boy, if I ever did this, I would mess up everything. Like, genuinely. There would be a mess and drops everywhere. And I would have multiple handkerchiefs or whatever, like little tissues everywhere. To make sure I wouldn't, like, ink myself. That's a very weird euphemism. I just inked myself. With out of context. Oh my. Anyway, the camera has moved closer to Bilbo's back, and we see a bit better what is around him. Similar to before, there is a lot of paper involved, but we also see a large vase with a bouquet of flowers. On the wall in the background, we see some sort of diploma or certificate. Maybe the papers proving that he owns this home. Who knows how much paperwork the hobbits do in their spare time. Looking at Bilbo's home, they do nothing else but paper-related things. On his right, we can see another sort of table holding up several different papers. They look very much like letters, old and new. Some of them he might have received in his youth, but others could be more recent, given that it's Bilbo's birthday. His 111th birthday, to be exact. Another thick letter tome is to his left, and also a thinner book that sort of looks like a journal. We then see the page with Concerning Hobbits as its title, and we cut hard over to 2 hobbits with 3 cows ploughing the fields. Now the reason why fields were ploughed and still are today is to bring out the fresh nutrients in the ground up to the surface, while weeds and crops remains would be buried deeper into the ground so they could decay away. A little information, a little trivia of farming here. I'm so educational for you guys. You're welcome. We see green trees and a green field behind them. With the comparison to the cow, we see how much shorter a hobbit is to a regular human. Tolkien described the hobbits as between 2 or 4 feet, with the average being 3 feet and 6 inches. Okay, listen, I'm a person who uses the normal common sense system, so hobbits are between 60 and 120 centimeters, with an average being 107 centimeters. A bit more than a meter, okay? A bit more than 1 meter. We then cut over to a hobbit pulling a pig behind him. Further in the back, we see a market with several different characters running around and going about their daily business. You can see some vegetables, several brown sacks, which I assume have potatoes in them. You know, the ones you mush and put into a stew. Best with a rabbit. Potatoes. Fudge, now I want chips. We see 2 houses, and unlike the holes, which are famously known here, these buildings look like normal houses, just in hobbit size. Wooden walls and a hay roof, though I'm sure there is more wood underneath that hay to make sure no water comes in from any rain or any other unpleasant weather conditions the Shire might experience from time to time. The next hobbit we see is an elderly halfling with a pipe in his mouth. The hobbits are known for their pipeweed, and even Gandalf later is mocked for enjoying it too much. In the book, after Tolkien explains in detail what exactly a hobbit is, he moves on to explain what's so special about the pipeweed. It is said that the hobbits claim ownership of smoking the pipe, since the herbs they use are very, very special. But I'll talk about the weeds and properties in another podcast. We'll see some cool tricks with some smoke later. You know which scene. It's the scene where Bilbo and Gandalf are taking a... whatever. The older hobbit is wearing a mix of brown and grey and pretty much looks like your basic, simple grandfather character. But we will never see him again, so goodbye, Grandpa. Bye, extra number 21. But I do have to say that his ears are large, like insanely huge. No elf can compete with those, like it's insane, wow. The camera then cuts to a collection of tables and chairs, and I think this might be some sort of pub, or tavern. Maybe this is the outside of the famous Green Dragon Inn. What foreshadowing in this masterpiece. We can see 4 lady hobbits talking with each other, 2 of which probably work at this establishment, given that the elderly one wanted to take the tray with the mugs and cups, but pushed it off to the younger one so she could have a friendly chat with either a regular customer or a friend. I assume the latter, given that the Shire seems to be a place where everybody sort of knows everyone, so... God, a society like this would end me so quickly. I can't be bothered to know everyone, okay? I'm already overwhelmed with myself. How should I keep track with others? Like, how? Tell me, please. But the hobbits here seem to be on very friendly terms, and smiles and the beginning of a hug are on display. All the while, hobbits in the background either enjoy a meal, smoke a pipe, and get their food served, or, you know, just live and be. What a nice life to have. It might be time for the second breakfast, given that the sun is already out. Second breakfast usually happens around 9 AM. It could also be elevenses, which is a small meal before actual lunch takes place, around 11 AM. So it might be either one of those for the hobbits eating their food here, like guessing what time of day it is right now. After that, we see what looks like a market, and I don't know if it says anything for anyone, but I'm getting a lot of Emil, aka Michael, vibes from this. See, the Swedish author Astrid Lindgren wrote several children's stories, like Pippi Longstocking, Ronja Daughter of Thieves, and also Emil of Lönneberga, or Emil's Pranks in English, all of which were turned into either small shows or a movie. Emil is a boy who lives on a farm with his family consisting of both his parents, his little sister, a maid, and a farmhand. He gets into constant trouble because he ends up pranking a lot of people, mostly his father, sometimes by accident, sometimes intended, but always funny for kids, at least for me. I really like this person, I really like this story. The reason why I'm mentioning this is because I remember one episode of Emil in which he goes to the market with his father and others, and the market looks very similar like this one. This one just looks hobbit-sized. It is also to mention that the clothing is rather similar. A lot of cloth and some leather, simple clothing and nothing too fancy or complicated. All has to be practical and easy to fix and replace. So it looks very 1970s farmer style, because Emil takes place in the 70s. Well, at least this shot right now kind of looks like it. The men, specifically. The women wear more medieval clothing, I have to admit. I just find it funny how Lord of the Rings reminded me of something Swedish, which I associate with home when we are in the Shire, which is exactly its purpose, to be home. Also, Tolkien was inspired by Norse mythology, Scandinavia, of which Sweden is a part of, and so we come full circle. Anyway, there is a hobbit pulling his goat from one side to the screen to the next. Another is holding something in his hand, trying to identify it. I can't help, no idea what this is meant to be. Maybe a piece of a chair? If so, where did the rest go? What happened to this chair? Who did this? What monster? We see the cellar and some more walking sticks leaning against the table. After this, we are met with another elderly hobbit having a pipe in his mouth. Damn, I don't want to know the lungs of the hobbits. Well, as long as they don't smoke the things with the tar in it, the lungs should actually be fine, or not as damaged. We then cut back to the scene we saw before, just zoomed out more, and we can make out more of the market and some things in the background as well. Much more veggies can be seen, and some flowers too. I see 3 horses or ponies on the hill behind the market. The hobbit from before is still trying to get his pig to move. The passing neighbors greet each other and the woman pets the pig. Well done, make him work for his bacon. I mean, to be honest, I would work for my bacon as well. Bilbo comments during these scenes that hobbits have been living and farming in the 4 farthings of the Shire for many hundreds of years, quite content to ignore and be ignored by the world of the big folk. Now we see the lush green fields and hills, a garden, at least 2 hobbit holes and a pond with a brown muddy water are shown to us. It screams, countryside, no Wi-Fi for miles, here you are, one with community and nature. And if all of that wasn't enough, have a hobbit milking a very unimpressed cow. Come on, Clara, you're part of movie history. Be excited. She also looks very thick. Like, is she pregnant? Are you pregante? After Clara's lackluster performance, we see 2 hobbits in front of their home, a Hobbithole. A place all my friends and I would like to have, with speedy internet, good water plumbing, and electricity, of course. One is sweeping the front, while the other just dumps a buttload of wooden logs in front of their door. Why would you do that? Couldn't you just drop them next to the bench on the right side here? There is enough space. How are you gonna get into your own house now? You even scared your chicken! Come on! Why would you scare your chicken? Has Legend of Zelda taught you nothing? Don't mess with the chicken. Bilbo continues on with his narration that Middle-earth being, after all, full of strange creatures beyond count, hobbits must seem of little importance, being neither renowned as great warriors, nor counted among the very wise. And this is heavily underlined with a sleeping hobbit next to a large pig, and another one picking his own ear with a dull expression on his face. We then hear Bilbo cackle a bit as he takes a little jab at his own people, and mostly family members, I assume. We see that he has written almost 1 page. Zooming in, we can make out what he has written is pretty much word for word what he has told us up to this point. I love details like this. I love it so much. It gives a certain sense of continuity and seriousness, and the immersion of this world is just much more. It's intense. People like me are very pleased to see details like this, so I hope I see more of that. Since we are at a new angle here, we can see a sketch of some sort on the top right. It looks like a woman, but I can't make out who it could be. Maybe a former crush of Bilbo? Or maybe he just sketched a friend? He is a talented writer and cartographer. I mean, I assume this, given he has so many bloody maps lying around. Like, the hell, people do say practice makes perfect, so if he did draw all these maps, then he must be a master at the craft of drawing. The music and his cackling is broken by a sudden knock at the door. Bilbo turns around, and we shift angles, and we are further back now. He's asking if Frodo could get the door. The hallway we are in now is the one we were in before. We see once again the mess of books and the many walking sticks on the left side. Otherwise, everything seems to be in place and order. But don't you think you're off the hook now, Grant? My eyes see all. And those all-seeing eyes can see Bilbo's hand with the owl, turkey, eagle feather, continuing to write his introduction to the Hobbits. Since we are even closer to the page than before, we can see the last few lines even clearer, and we can clearly see the words, the very wise. So he is writing this in real time. Remember that fact. In years, once we reach Rivendell, I will come back to this little fact, that he's writing this in real time, so keep that in mind. He aligns the tip of the feather onto the paper, and now we know why Bilbo's fingers and hand were clear and in a wonderful condition and not covered in ink. There is no ink on the feather. It is only for a few frames, and on normal speed you probably wouldn't notice it. You would focus more onto the hand than the tip of the feather. But we ain't. He just moves the tip up and down with the movement of the upcoming paragraph, but there is no ink that covers the page. What can you say for yourself, Mr. Grand Major? More like Mr. Grand Major-oversight. Got him! Got him good! Ha! The music chimes in once Bilbo continues on with his introduction, really tying in. This theme goes hand in hand with the Hobbits and their home. Naturally, since this is the Shire theme, so it would be weird if it wouldn't play right now, so... We then see two lovebirds talking on this nice sunny September day. I don't know how warm it can be. And it looks like that he has given her some nice flowers. And they look like your standard field flowers. Like, I see daisies and some yellow dandelion or mini sunflowers. They look like a hybrid of dandelions and sunflowers, but just tiny. Very tiny. And yeah, that's kind of it. That's all there is. Wow, you must really love her, man. But, you know, that's the charm of the Hobbits, isn't it? This, and that they value food over physical intimacy. Hell yeah, they're my kind of people. As she goes in for a kiss with closed eyes, a granny passes with a plate of cupcakes with different fillings, and our man of the hour turns away and snatches one of them to deliciously devour it. I'm not sure if this woman of dreams fell asleep or has a bunch of patience, but if I were her, I would have opened my eyes by now and snatched a cupcake away from him, eating it myself. Man, now I want a cupcake. While this is happening, Bilbo tells us that in fact it has been remarked by some that Hobbits' only real passion is food. Perfectly shown here. Food over love. Food on all the tables in the background. Apples, pies, cheese, bread, cupcakes, everything your heart desires. My heart at least. Why does everything look so fantastically delicious in movies and in anime? Why do the things look so good? I'm hungry now. Damn it. With a cut to a bunch of barrels and green hills in the background, Bilbo elaborates that this statement of food is a rather unfair one, since the Hobbits have developed a keen interest in the brewing of ales and smoking their pipeweed. To further underline this, we see more people carrying barrels with ale, see them drink straight from it, and bump into a cloud of pipeweed caused by 3 hobbits. I'm not sure if you kind of try to defend your people, Bilbo, but you're not really making a good point here. Like, yeah, you like to take in shit. What the hell am I saying? We're shown more hobbits hard at work with farming duties, and we see even more of the lush and green scenery. I apologize, but I can't think of any other word than green. So, yeah, like nature invented green and dumped it all onto the Shire. We see where Yavanna had the most fun with her greenery. 2 elderly hobbits are seen playing chess. I think it's chess. It kind of looks like chess. Maybe they had to make do because some pieces were missing because the grandchildren took them to play burglar and dragon. Explaining why they don't really help with Bilbo's preparations for his birthday. More green and garden is shown to us, and we hear Bilbo say that the true passion of hobbits lie in peace and good tilled earth. Yes, I see. If the other 1,000 frames of green fields, hills and gardens weren't enough, now I know. Thank you, Mr. Baggins. We can make out multiple hobbits either at work or trying to supervise the children running around, playing and laughing. In the background, another Hobbithole is visible and it looks almost swallowed by the fields around it. Finally, we see a face of someone familiar, or someone who will be familiar for us later in this trilogy. It is SAMWISE GAMGE, played by Sean Astin, who at the time was already 30 years old. Wow, he really doesn't look like it. Or my nostalgia goggles are preventing me from seeing it. Sean Astin has many different roles under his belt, such as this one, or in Stranger Things as Bob, who was a true hero, or the movie My Wife is Retarded. No idea what this one is about, but the name is hilarious. You want to tell us something, Sean? Do you want to tell us something? Do you need help? Back to Sam. He is the first member of the Fellowship shown to us. Pretty poetic, given the major role he is going to play in this trilogy, and he pretty much is the symbolic meaning of fellowship, so it's perfect. Again, perfection. That's what Sam is, because number 7. See what I did there? Sam is a gardener and a simple hobbit. He is Frodo's best friend and later most dependable companion. There is a reason that every good journey needs a Sam. Sam was the youngest child of his family, which we'll never see here. I'm not even sure if we really meet any of them in the books. He has a strong love for the elves and is a big fanboy of them. He has a gift for poetry and is the first one to tell us that the elves are leaving Middle-earth and going into the west. Which is nice foreshadowing because both Frodo and Sam will go into the west, like together, much later in life of course, and Frodo goes first and Sam will go after. As seen here, Sam has brown eyes and somewhat ginger hair. It is an interesting mix of red and bright brown. He is wearing a flannel of a brown theme and a vest in a similar colour. As we zoom in on him, we see that he is surrounded by flowers, all in bright bloom. Again, it is September. How? How is anything in bloom here? Should be dying at this point. This is showing us that he is a very skilled gardener, I assume, because it's cold apparently. We see that the door to his home is in a bright yellow and that it almost is overgrown by his garden. Bilbo also explains that all hobbits share a love for things that grow, and Sam is the literal embodiment of that statement. He is a good-hearted person and loves the world, and he loves the simple life and goes out to fight for it. Sam is the Hobbit. Sam picks up a bundle of flowers and his expression changes from a focused to a wide-eyed one. I guess he is meant to be happy here, and sure, the smile tells us that, but for a moment there, he almost looked surprised that the flower didn't wither away. Like, whew, guess I can keep my job as a gardener. Then the camera flies over a hill and shows us a major part of the Shire, and I can't remain quiet about it anymore and I need to talk about the Shire. The set, to be exact. A place all my friends want to go to, myself included. We need to go there. As we know, all of the Lord of the Ring trilogy was filmed in the glorious land of New Zealand. The Shire and Hobbiton were filmed around the Waikato town of Matamata. This is on the North Island, located close to the Kamai Ranges base. The Kamai Ranges is a mountain, a glorious mountain, which separates the Waikato in the west from the Bay of Plenty in the east. That's such a cool name, Bay of Plenty. Sounds straight from a fantasy novel. A farm close to the town was the location/set for Hobbiton. In 1978, the Alexander family moved to the property with 500 hectare land, which is 500 square kilometers, which is a little smaller than the entirety of Gibraltar. It's big. Like, for a farm. In my opinion, is it small? Apparently it's small for a farm, but for me it's big. Since the family moved into the land, it has been a livestock ranch with 13,000 sheep and other animals, and the main source of income came from farming mutton, wool, and beef. That would change when Peter Jackson discovered the farm in 1998. He saw this place and thought that it looked like a slice of ancient England. Very accurate. You see, a Shire is not a fantasy word. Unlike in some other languages, for example in German, the Shire is das Auenland, which is a made-up word. But a Shire is something that does exist in our real world. To make it simple, a Shire is a county, aka a traditional term for a division of land found in Great Britain, Australia and New Zealand. We find the first use of that word in Wessex during the beginning of the Anglo-Saxon settlement in the 10th century. The term Shire is used as a suffix, so at the end of a name of a county. If I were to add this suffix to my name, I'd be Gaydien Shire, and if I use it as an affix, it'd be Shire Gaydien. This gives us places like Bedfordshire, Worcestershire, Yorkshire, to name a few. You see, all the counties in England make up half of the area of England. Tolkien named the Shire Shire, given his love for his own home, Worcestershire. This place was pure home to him. No matter how fair or squalid, no other part of the world would ever be more home than that feeling. This place oozes the feeling of welcome and home for him. Later in the books, not in the films, the Shire is taken over by Saruman for a brief time and partly industrialized. This was called the Scouring of the Shire. This was based on Tolkien witnessing the same thing happening to rural Warwickshire in his youth. That is a mouthful. Warwickshire. The hobbits going out to save their home, or more like the embodiment of a home to return to, is always present in this story. Of course, also to save the rest of the world, but the main motivator is to save the Shire. But yeah, after Peter Jackson had negotiated with the owners of the land, work began to turn it into the Green Shire we all know and love. Work began in 1999 and ended rather quickly, given the film began officially in the same year. They created the facades for 37 Hobbitholes with gardens and hedges erected at 29-ton oak above Bag End and much more. Even though this set was new, the place looked old and lived in. According to Jackson, he knew that Hobbiton needed to be warm and comfortable and field lived in, so they let the weeds grow through the cracks and established hedges and little gardens a year before the filming began. So maybe they filmed the Shire scenes last? It doesn't always work to film a movie by chronological order and simply do the scenes the team is able to do on certain dates. For example, the Quidditch scenes in Harry Potter were filmed last because the CGI was new and very pricey, and it took the longest to film. However, the set wasn't built to last, and after filming had ended, it was partly torn down. But with the Hobbit trilogy, it was partly restored in 2010. Anyways, guided tours commenced in 2002. An excursion that takes around 2 hours, that being the most popular one. There are, of course, multiple ones. The first one being the Hobbiton trademark movie set tour, the 2-hour one. It costs 89 New Zealand dollars for adults and 44 if you're 9 to 16 years old, and the people under that go for free. The tour includes a guided walk through Hobbiton, ending in the Green Dragon Inn, where you are presented with a complimentary exclusive Hobbiton South farting beverage to conclude your Middle-earth adventure. There is also the Evening Banquet Tour. As the name suggests, you would be guided through the set at dusk, and similar to the regular tour, rewarded with a drink at the Green Dragon Inn, but it adds a 2-course banquet feast, additional drinks, and a lantern-lit walk through the set under the moonlight. Much pricier, of course, $199 for the adults, $162 for the teens, and $144 for the kids. Yeah, not even the young ones are getting safe from this one. This tour does take 4 hours, so the price makes sense. But the most expensive one is the private tour. Up to 6 people can book it, and it goes up to a total of 1,000 New Zealand dollars. Now, if you're able to get 5 friends to go with you, it actually is kind of cheaper. You do pretty much the same as the Hobbiton trademark movie set tour, but alone, in privacy, with no strangers to bother you and no one to judge you when you nerd out and point at things like a weirdo. Maybe the guide will judge you, but what do you care? You're in Middle-earth now. Man, I wouldn't do that. God damn it, this podcast is making me crave traveling and food. For more information, just check hobbitontours.com. Or rush over to the Shire's Rest 501 Buckland Road, Hinuara in New Zealand. I'm not joking, that's the official address in the real world. I love it here. I do apologize, but I needed to talk about this location. It's hard to keep all that information inside when it's so cool. But let's return to the movie. More and more hobbits are seen putting up posts, flags, and tents, and others put up barrels in their place, and we see a huge banner saying, "Happy Birthday, Bilbo Baggins." All the while, Bilbo says that today of all days, it is brought home to him, it is not bad to celebrate a simple life. A simple life? Yes, you, Bilbo Baggins. Now, why is the entire Shire throwing this party for this one hobbit? Well, because he wasn't living a simple life. Surely, most of it, yes, but one event was enough to turn him into a somewhat sensation, pretty much into a celebrity into the Shire, and it's because his life wasn't simple that all the hobbits want to celebrate him. Let me elaborate on that. Let's dive in to the original book, The Hobbit. Bilbo Baggins was living his normal, ordinary life until one day the wizard Gandalf appeared and said no to that. Gandalf had previously met with Thorin's company, a group of dwarves consisting of Gloin, Oin, Ori, Nori, Dori, Dvalin, Balin, Kili, Fili, Bifur, Bofur, Bombur, and Thorin Oakenshield.
Marry me!
See, the dwarves needed a burglar to reclaim their home, Erebor, also known as the Lonely Mountain. Many years ago, the dragon Smaug had taken over their home and driven the dwarves away, rendering them homeless. So Gandalf suggested to Thorin a hobbit as a burglar, since their natural ability to disappear and move unnoticed will be of aid for them for sure. He then proceeded to carve a rune into Bilbo's door, which translated means like, burglar wants a good job, plenty of excitement, and reasonable reward. Straightforward and easy. I wish job hunting these days would be like that. The 13 dwarves then show up at Bilbo's door. They bicker a bit and Bilbo gets the job with the help of Gandalf, and the quest is that: use a secret door to get into the Lonely Mountain, send forth their burglar to steal as much of the riches within its halls as possible, and give a recon report, then have everyone kill the dragon Smaug to become rich again. That's specific. Should be possible. So they move out and face multiple obstacles on the way. They are almost eaten by trolls, which are luckily tricked by Gandalf and then turned to stone, which we'll see later in this film. Like, we'll see the trolls later in this film. Bilbo finds the elven short sword he later names Sting. They reach Rivendell, where Elrond helps them out with the map. After that, they are captured by goblins of the Misty Mountains. This is where Bilbo gets separated from the party and finds the One Ring. He also meets Gollum and would have a riddle game with the former halfling. The conditions are simple. If Bilbo wins, Gollum shows him the way out, and if Bilbo loses, Gollum gets to eat him. Spoilers! Bilbo wins, and Gollum ain't too happy about that and gives chase after Bilbo. By sheer luck, the ring ends up on Bilbo's finger and he realizes that he is invisible while wearing it, because Gollum straight up passes him without looking at him. He was ready to kill Gollum but decided to spare his life instead. This will be super important later, because without Gollum the One Ring would not have been destroyed. So, well done Bilbo on your compassion. But yeah, he then reunites with the dwarves, escapes an attack of wargs, those are evil wolves, we see them in the Two Towers. They escaped thanks to the eagles. Side note, those eagles were formed by Manwë, the king of the Valar, and are also some sort of Maya like Gandalf and Sauron. So yeah, I thought I'd share that little tidbit. They then meet a man named Beorn. Beorn? Björn? Beorn, whatever. Someone who can turn into a bear. A freaking bear. Beorn is basically a druid with wild shape ability. After Beorn, Gandalf leaves the gang for some time, and the rest continues with traveling through Mirkwood. Even though the wizard had warned them not to leave the path, they did it anyway, ending up trapped by big spiders. Bilbo saves the dwarves with the ability of the ring and his sword Sting. That rhymed. Only too late to be captured by wood elves, except for Bilbo, of course, who saves them yet again. Also here we meet the ever so fabulous Thranduil, son of Urfer, the Elven King, who ruled over the woodland realm in the Second and Third Age. I'll talk about this fabulous mess once we meet Legolas, who is his son. But for now, the time is dedicated to the children of Dwarf Daddy. Once Bilbo busts the dwarves out, again, like seriously they would be screwed without him, they spend some time in Lake Town, make some friends, like Bart the Bowman. Remember him? He will do something, maybe with a bow, who knows. Bilbo and company eventually find the entrance to the Lonely Mountain, thanks to a thrush. And no, not the horrible infectious one, but the bird. Thrush is also the name of a bird. In the movie it looks like a grey-cheeked thrush, found in North America. And yes, the type of bird exists in our world too. What did you expect? That Tolkien, next to an entire universe, including languages and different cultures, would also create his own type of bird? Get out of here! Who has time for that? Also, this bird has an actual role and is relevant. Bilbo then meets up with Smaug, the dragon, and evil-winged lizard, realizes that people of Lake Town helped the dwarves to get here. So he took that very personal and went out to Lake Town to attack it, as a punishment. Thankfully, the little thrush... That sounds wrong, without any context. This bird belongs to an ancient race of bird. Wait, so Tolkien did make a special bird race? What didn't you do? You did everything! Oh, gods. So that type of bird was able to communicate with the men of Lake Town, and after hearing what Bilbo had discovered, it rushed over to the town and met Bart the Bowman, and told him of the one weakness Smaug had. A bare patch in his armor on the left side near his heart. If that were to be hit, it'll kill the dragon. Bada bing, bada boom. Bart shot the dragon with a bow and arrow, like a bowman. Real creative here, Tolkien. And Smaug was dead. Yay! And now the men of the town wanted the riches of the dwarves as compensation. Not so yay. Even the elves showed up for some of the treasure because they had a bad history with the dwarves. Boy, do they. But in that regard, the elves should pay the dwarves back, because back in the day, elves hunted the dwarves for sport, because they saw them as lesser beings and thought them to be animals. Yep, elves weren't really great back then. I mean, they still kind of are pricks, but they're fine now. Looking at you, Galadriel. So yeah, a lot of yelling happens, then the two armies of the goblins and wargs show up, and everybody fights, and we get the Battle of 5 armies, with men, dwarves, elves, versus goblins and wargs. Bilbo is not present during the fight, because he gets knocked unconscious and wakes up when it's over. Again, I told you it happened several times in his story, him losing consciousness and then waking up when all of this is over. But yeah, so once everything had calmed out and people mourned the dead... The treasure is eventually split and Bilbo refuses most of his share, mainly because he has no idea how to transport it all. This is also such a flex, like, oh, this is so much, I can't carry it all. Keep most of it. So yeah, he just takes enough to make him super rich for Shire standards and go back home to return to a simple life, unaware of what he had picked up and how much havoc it'll cause. The One Ring, that being the One Ring. So yeah, it is a good thing to celebrate a simple life. But your life, Bilbo, was anything but simple. Dear Lord, this took a while. I'm sorry, but it had to be done. Never thought I'd sum up the plot of The Hobbit in here. Speaking of hobbits, we still have some of the movie to go through. The hobbits who put up the banner applaud each other and the music fades away as we cut back to Bilbo, who gets interrupted, again, by persistent knocking. Bilbo asks Frodo once again to open the door, and that's it. We have reached another mark of 5 minutes of this podcast series. Honestly, in the beginning of writing this episode, I was somewhat worried about the length, because not much was really going on. We had the part with Gollum and the Shire. That's it, that's all there was. There wasn't anything else really. And yet, here we are, page 21 of the script. And the more the movie goes on, the more details just creep in. Well, I hope you're all ready for them references to other works and my own childhood of Swedish literature, because we are in for a ride, friends. Hopefully. Maybe. Probably. But yeah, what will happen next? Will Bilbo open the door? Where is Frodo? Will a dragon swoop across the Shire and explode into 1,000 pieces? All of those questions we might answer in another podcast of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring podcast. Take care. Until next time. Bye-bye.